What's up, Fantasy Pros gang? My name is Andrew Erickson. Today I'm going to be breaking down my trade targets before Week 8 kicks off. But before I get to my list, if you want a chance to win a glorious Fantasy Football Championship belt for your league, courtesy of our good friends at Trophy Smack, the ¡1 destination for epic fantasy football trophies, you need to subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel right now, drop a comment below on this video, and that's it. I'm announcing a winner right here on the channel. So make sure to turn on those notifications so you can know when new videos are up and to claim your prize. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get right to the trade list before Week 8 kicks off. Running back Dameon Pierce, Houston Texans. Devin Singletary took the lead back role in Week 6, carrying the ball 12 times for 58 yards, averaging 4.8 yards per carry. He led the backfield with a 54% snap share, ran around on 56% of the dropbacks, which boosted his total snap numbers. Meanwhile, Dameon Pierce contributed 13 carries for 34 yards. It was bizarre to see Singletary play so much after not tallying any carries in Week 5. But he led the team in carries in the first half, 9-8. Pierce was held to just a 33% snap share. Woof. But Pierce had the chance for touchdowns with 3 goal line rushing attempts. And with a great matchup in Carolina coming after the bye week, the Texans offensive line getting healthier, and the Pierce manager panicked about Singletary taking over this backfield, I'd be looking at Dameon Pierce as a sharp buy low target. He still started the last game we saw, and he entered Week 6 with back-to-back games with 20-plus carries, with one game where Singletary saw 0 rushing attempts. D'Amico Ryans talked about a more balanced approach with the run game, which still suggests that Pierce is still the lead back, even if Singletary is spelling him on certain occasions, as he was already doing this season. Pierce is still a 0 in the passing game, but he should have more productive rushing games with Houston playing more competitively. And more importantly, he is seeing the red zone usage, which is what leads to the most fantasy points for running backs. Buy Dameon Pierce on the cheap with Brian Robinson, Javonte Williams, or this next sell high running back. Running back Alexander Mattison, Minnesota Vikings. No stranger to the list, Madison's back on it. Look, the Vikings backfield was different on Monday Night Football. Madison had 8 rushing attempts for 39 yards, averaging 4.9 yards per carry. Longest run was 19 yards. Meanwhile, Cam Akers had a team-high 10 rushing attempts for 31 yards, 3.1 yards per carry. Longest run of 13 yards. Akers played a season-high 39% snap share to Madison's second lowest snap share of the year at 53%. Akers was targeted 3 times, caught 2 passes for 30 yards. Madison was targeted 3 times, also caught 2 passes, but just for 3 yards. Madison ran more routes than Akers, 21 versus 12, and saw the lone goal line carry, which he was stuffed on. However, Akers overall out-touched Madison 12-10. I've been preaching this all season that Madison's grip on the RB1 role with the Vikings was loose, and that Akers would eventually carve out a larger role in the backfield. It's happening right before our eyes. Get out while you still can. Move Alexander Mattison ASAP for Garrett Wilson, Ramondre Stevenson, Rachaad White, or this next buy low wide receiver. Wide receiver Calvin Ridley, Jacksonville Jaguars. Ridley was held to just 1 catch on 4 targets for 5 yards on Thursday Night Football. Woof. He had 0 targets in the first half. Double woof. And yet he still played 88% of the snaps and ran around on a team-high 94% of the dropbacks. He led the offense with 75 air yards. Since Week 2, Ridley has just a 17% target share. Ranks 50th among wide receivers. Not great. But if you have Ridley, you're obviously concerned. I recommend selling him last week, but after a primetime stinker, I doubt you'll get any fair offers for the Jaguars' #1 wide receiver in terms of usage. So what's the move? You gotta buy low. That's where the value is. Because as bad as Ridley has been, he still displayed the spike week potential you want from a fantasy wide receiver 2 attached to an above average quarterback. It was just 2 weeks ago he got 7 balls for 122 yards. He's still the team's leader in air yard share at 36%, and I really doubt the Thursday night game is indicative of a Jamal Agnew future breakout, as he was highly involved in the game plan. The upcoming schedule features favorable matchups against teams like the Steelers and Titans. And most importantly, the team will be likely getting back Zay Jones into the fold. And that's good for Ridley, because having Jones opposite him has presented him with softer looks from the defense. Case in point, Ridley's 2 games with 100-plus yards this year were games that Jones was active in. Acquire Ridley with Adam Thielen, Brian Robinson, or even this newly crowned RB1. Running back Darrell Henderson, Los Angeles Rams. Henderson was fresh off the couch, yet he started the game for the Rams, ran the ball 18 times for 61 yards, averaging 3.4 yards per carry, scored a touchdown versus the Steelers in Week 7. He logged 3 total red zone opportunities and 57% of the snaps. Meanwhile, Royce Freeman carried the ball 12 times for 66 yards, averaging 5.5 yards per carry, did not score a touchdown, 43% snap share. Zach Evans was nowhere to be found. He did not log an offensive snap. He did play on special teams. At least we got the report Sunday morning that Evans would not be the featured guy behind Freeman and Hendo, but to the extent to which those two were used was up in the air. Those two running backs switched off the drives for the Rams. Henderson had 9 carries in the first half to Freeman's 7, and it will likely be a split backfield until Kyren Williams returns. But until that time comes, I'll be sure to make sure Henderson is not available on waivers. However, as I've preached with all running backs on the Rams this season, none of these guys are made for the long haul. Sean McVay churns through running backs like fantasy managers on the waiver wire. So what's the move if you already have Henderson or acquired him off waivers this week? You sell high. Remember, the Steelers were a favorable matchup for running backs. Dallas will present a much tougher challenge in Week 8, and managers need to consider that Myles Gaskin might be added to the mix next week after being a healthy scratch in Week 7. Cash out now. Consider me very skeptical that an already off the couch can be a true difference maker. He's never been able to stay healthy, and recall that the Rams outright cut him last November, despite him leading the team in rushing yards at that time. I went down the retread running back road with Cam Akers this year, and I will not be fooled again by McVay's up and down relationship with his backfield. Package Henderson in a deal to acquire a running back that has been underperforming the last 2 weeks. Running back Austin Eckler, Los Angeles Chargers. Eckler totaled 14 rushes for 45 yards in Week 7, averaging 3.2 yards per carry. To make matters worse, he had just 2 targets, both in the first quarter, 1 catch for 1 yard, 2 red zone carries, but no touchdowns. However, his overall workload volume was strong for a second straight game with 14 carries, and he posted a 63% snap share. And had he gotten the carry that Joshua Kelly scored a long touchdown run on instead, fantasy managers would have been much less frustrated with his performance. He was also dealing with an injury in the game and may not have been 100%. The Week 8 matchup for Chicago is also ideal. The Bears are good against running backs in the run game, but they are by far the worst defense on planet Earth against running backs in the passing game. After facing 2 strong defensive units between the Cowboys and Chiefs, we should expect to see the Chargers offense get back on track to some extent with Eckler at the forefront of the game plan. Send Josh Jacobs, Chris Olave, CeeDee Lamb, and this primetime sell-high running back to get Eckler on the cheap. Running back Deontay Foreman, Chicago Bears. Foreman carried the ball 16 times for 89 yards, averaging 5.6 yards per carry, scored 2 rushing touchdowns in Week 7. He was also targeted 5 times, caught 3 passes for 31 yards, scored another receiving touchdown. He was an absolute monster with the football, 5 total red zone touches. But Darrington Evans carried the ball 14 times for 48 yards, 3.4 yards per carry, also saw 3 targets. 6 of his carries did come right after Foreman was forced to leave the game with an injury, hence the snaps favoring Darrington Evans. But like last week, Evans also saw the first carry of the game despite Deontay Foreman starting. I have to imagine that Foreman will be a highly debated running back to trade this week, but the process is clearly to sell high for a running back coming off a 3-touchdown game when his role has been boosted by injuries around him in a supremely soft matchup. One would think that Khalil Herbert or Roschon Johnson will eventually return and push Foreman for touches, which has already been the case when he split work with Evans over the last 2 games. I like to think that Foreman has shown enough to be the Bears running back 1 moving forward, but he's done this same old song and dance for the last 2 seasons. 2022, Week 8 versus Atlanta, 31.8 fantasy points and 3 touchdowns. Next week versus the Bengals, 4 points. Although the Week 8 matchup versus the Chargers appears soft versus the run, LA has been stout since returning from the bye week, fewer than 35 rushing yards allowed to both Isaiah Pacheco and Tony Pollard in back-to-back weeks. The Bears are also massive road dogs, which doesn't foreshadow Foreman's continuing his hot streak in Week 8. The Saints are no cakewalk versus the run either in Week 9. Foreman for this next running back? Who says no? Running back Bijan Robinson, Atlanta Falcons, bye. Bijan Robinson finished with 1 touch in Week 7, with 33 seconds remaining in the game. Arthur Smith made it known that it was because Robinson wasn't feeling great after halftime, which is why he wasn't getting the ball, even though he was still on the field seeing snaps. Reported after the game that he was dealing with headaches, which kept him out of action entirely. It shouldn't be an issue moving forward, and that's why you want to buy low, because the value has hit rock bottom with Bijan Robinson. And although it's early, the playoff schedule is juicy for the Falcons, featuring the Panthers, Colts, and Chicago Bears. Grab the talented rookie, the likes of Josh Jacobs or Alvin Kamara, or consider a package with this next wide receiver in the deal. Wide receiver Terry McLaurin, Washington Commanders. In terms of targets, McLaurin led the team with 9 targets in Week 7, followed by Jahan Dotson and Curtis Samuel with 8 targets each. McLaurin led 6 passes for 90 yards, averaged 15 yards per catch. He was targeted 4 times in the red zone, catching 3, but no touchdowns. He also saw 1 target in the entire first half. I'm always looking to sell high on McLaurin just because I don't feel great hitching my wagon to him in the Commanders offense for the long haul. The schedule isn't ideal either. Eagles, Patriots, Seahawks, and Giants over the next month for Washington. I'd move McLaurin for Deontay Johnson, Drake London, Dameon Pierce, or this next buy low wide receiver. Wide receiver T. Higgins, Cincinnati Bengals. Higgins was a major bust again in week 6 before the bye week, with 2 catches for 20 yards on 4 targets. He has had 1 good game this season. But it's worth noting that he did not play a full-time role in that contest, running a route on just 56% of the dropbacks, as he continues to deal with a rib injury. But coming off the bye week, I think he'll be healthier, making him a screaming buy low target. Again, I say this because his production is going to regress positively. Higgins has always been a fantasy wide receiver 2 throughout his entire 3-year NFL career. Currently, he's wide receiver 69 through his games played, but it's justified based on the injury and the slow start for the offense. He won't finish that poorly over the rest of the season. The definition of a buy low wide receiver with the most fantasy points scored under expectation. Higgins is wide receiver 21 expected points per game, wide receiver 60 in actual points per game. 49ers, Bills, Texans, Ravens are on the schedule after the bye week for the Bengals. Acquire Higgins with Adam Thielen, Deebo Samuel, Alexander Madison, Chris Olave, or with this next prime sell-high running back. Jahmyr Gibbs, Detroit Lions. Gibbs carried the ball 11 times for 68 yards, averaging 6.2 yards per carry, and scored 1 touchdown in week 7 with David Montgomery out of the lineup. The usage was strong with 10 targets, 20% target share, catching 9 balls for 58 yards, 87% snap share. He was a locked and loaded fantasy RB1 as long as Montgomery is sidelined. But that being said, this Lions team loves David Montgomery. It's not like Gibbs' usage translated into a real-life win for the Lions, as they were blown out by the Ravens. In the first half alone, Gibbs had 3 carries for 9 yards, 2 catches for 5 yards. Craig Reynolds carried the ball just 3 times for 16 yards. Obviously, Gibbs is a risky sell with an awesome matchup versus the Raiders in week 8, which we don't anticipate Montgomery returning for as the Lions have a week 9 bye week. But don't forget, they play on Monty on a short week after he missed time, so never say never. Still, if you need a W in week 8, I think you have to hold on to Gibbs. But if you can afford a longer outlook on your fantasy team, selling Gibbs high is the move to make for a roster that needs to win now. Look for a strong return like Bijan Robinson, David Montgomery himself, Zay Flowers, or Jalen Waddle. And that concludes my list of 10 players to trade before week 8. If you enjoyed this list, be sure to give it a like, subscribe, and share with all your friends. And again, for all your trades, go check out the FantasyPros rest of season rankings. And before you leave, if you want a chance to win a glorious fantasy football championship belt for your league, courtesy of our good friends at Trophy Smack, the number 1 destination for epic fantasy football trophies, all you have to do is subscribe to the FantasyPros YouTube channel right now, drop a comment below on this video, and that is it. I'm announcing a winner right here on the channel. So make sure to turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when new episodes are up and to claim your prize. Thanks for watching.